everyone. Welcome back to Nobody Cares About Dad Virtual Social. This week, as ever, joined by my co-host, AD. AD, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm very well. You?
Yeah, good, thanks. A bit sunburnt from being sat outside all day, but yeah, pretty good. And this week, we're blessed to be joined all the way from Vancouver by author, lifestyle coach, mentor, Dai Manuel.
Hey guys, hello from the other side of the pond. Yeah, it's going well. You know, I'm stoked to be here. You know, talking to a couple fellow dads, some brothers in arms, and it's great. I'm super excited just to be part of this conversation. I love what you guys are doing. The themes that you're speaking to, specifically as fathers, being a father. I can tell you, when I became a dad 18 years ago for the first time, I got to tell you, I sure wish there was better support materials out there, let alone communities or just people talking about this stuff, So, I'm happy to be here. Thanks, guys.
Like I say, really pleased to sort of have you on. We're a pretty brand new show. I mean, we started January, I think was the beginning of February was the first podcast. Actually, AD was my first one-on-one interview that I did.
Sweet.
Yeah, we were just like, so me and AD have known each other since college. And then we our first interview. We're like, actually, it was just quite a good conversation. Why don't we just do more of this as a group? So that's sort of how it was. And it initially started as a sort of one-on-one with dads telling that parental journey, but from the dad's side, the side that rarely ever gets talked about. But it just started to pivot more into a generalist chat around mental health, wellness, self-improvement. And we'd literally just started to have a look for people that would be a little bit more interesting. We signed up to Matchmaker FM. And then I came across your talk on Superhuman. And I actually shared it with AD. And I was like, we've got to get this guy. We've got to get this guy on the podcast.
It was the title alone that got me.
Yeah, right.
I was like, I'm in.
Yeah. Right. Well, we're all working towards being super dads, right? So that little human piece, but the dad piece, right? Like that trumps everything else. So it's, but yeah, no, it's super cool. I'm glad that you guys had an opportunity to watch. I don't know if you caught the newest TED Talk. I just did a TED Talk as well, and talked about vulnerability as a man. Touched down on my fatherhood experience as well on that, because there's been some pretty big learnings along the way, So I'd love to share that with you guys as well later, but it's all good. It's all good.
Cool. Yeah, that's actually one of my points, and I like what you said. You because we talk about this quite a lot, and you talk about the vulnerability isn't a woman thing; it's a human thing, and that's just this whole. We talk about this a lot, don't we, Eddie? Bravado of a man, and it's like, no, you have to be this big, strong, masculine person, and to show emotion you're soft and weak.
It's pure stereotype, isn't it? It's pure stereotype. It becomes part of your label as such. It's your label, and especially as a dad, it's you have to be the strong protector, the provider, everything. And it's that misconception. People just think you can just brush everything off, but actually the more times you slope your shoulder, it's heavy. It's heavy to pick back up.
That's true.
But like you said, it's that vulnerability. I think it makes you superhuman to be able to show that vulnerability, because I think this day and age now, men especially are starting to show more emotion. We're starting to talk about it more, and I think the change is coming. I think it's happening, because we speak to people like every week, and it's crazy how much you learn from somebody when you're listening to them, and they go, I've held my hands up a couple of times and said that I need help.
Yes,
because it's something you forget about. It's like, again, Marco's point, it's that bravado of being a man. But it's amazing hearing everyone's journey.
Well, and I'll commend you guys, because sort of what you're doing is very much showing that there is, well, one, it's okay, it's safe, but you're role modeling the behavior, right? And I think that was the biggest thing that I learned when started running men's groups. It's like nonprofit, they're free to attend, but we do them every Monday night, and we have 4 different times. It's actually the UK group's meeting like right now. Oh, wow. And it's super cool because men come together, we meet on Zoom, Monday nights. We call it Mentorship Mondays. Mentorship Monday. So it's just for men. And what I noticed was when we started to invite people, because guys would often show up because a buddy would show up and they say, man, you got to come check out this group. It's been like life-changing and meeting some great dudes. I think you'll really like it. But that's about all they'll say, right? So you get these new guys that show up to a men's group for the first time and they're like, what's going on here? You know, you can tell like they're just a little bit, I don't know if this is for me. And what's super interesting and what I've noticed time and time again is all it takes is for that first person to go. The first person to go, to be vulnerable, to share a story, share something that's real for them, something that might not be a struggle, could even be a win. I mean, even as men, sometimes we're afraid to talk about the good things that are going on in our lives because we're worried that the other guy's going to think that we're bragging. Yeah. We're pounding our chest. But it's, when my friends do something great, I want to celebrate that with them. I want to celebrate them and all the hard work that it took to get to that point. I'm not here thinking, oh, why not me? Because it's really often we feel apprehensive about being completely honest, even about the good things in our life. So when I'm referring to vulnerability, I'm not talking just about the hard stuff. I'm talking about the good stuff too, right? Like, why can't we have an open dialogue as men and be able to celebrate the good stuff in our lives together too? And so all it takes is one guy to go first. And once he goes first, it gives everybody else permission. So you guys are doing that with your show, right? Like you are going first. You're showing it's okay to have these conversations. And look, nothing bad happens when you do. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So interesting.
Do you know, it's funny you say, because I've had this conversation quite a few times about the difference in mentality across the ponds, right?
Right. Yeah.
In America, so I found this, and I'm probably being very stereotyping here and generalizing everybody. It's just my experience. Like, over that side, if you do something well, people will look at you and be like, "Oh, how did you do that?" Like, well done. Like, very much. How did you do that? Like, if you're driving a Ferrari, someone will be like, oh, "How did he get that?" Whereas over here in England, it's very much, look at that prick. That is what it's like. Isn't that right, AD? Like, you see somebody who's doing well, flat, and you just think, "Oh, look at that dick." And that's such a British mentality to have.
It's that instant jealousy, isn't it? It's that instant jealousy, and that you personally think, well, no, I should have that. Like, if you've got that, why haven't I got that? But you're right. It's over that side of the water. It's very much a people want to learn from it. People want to know your story, how you got that. Over here, we don't care how you got it. We're just annoyed you've got it.
Well, and to be fair, I don't know if that's just a UK thing. I think it's very common. And I hate to generalize. Again, I try not to generalize, but I know from my own personal experience, especially growing up, in my 20s and my 30s, I would often get very, I don't know if I would call it jealous, but you get upset. Like you almost feel some animosity towards other men, or at least I would feel animosity towards other men when they would start talking about all the good things that are happening for them. I'd be like, well, you're kind of bragging here. You're kind of being a dick. Like, why are you talking about that? But I used to, even when I would meet men for the first time, like, it was amazing how quickly I would start judging things in my head without even talking to them first, right? Yeah. You size them up, you look at them, you're like, oh, I don't know, man. You're potentially an enemy. I don't know if I can be open with you. I don't know if I want to like you yet. Like, just this barrier, invisible barrier that I would put up all the time when I would meet new men and never really get to know them. And then all of a sudden, I find myself in my 30s going through a big lifestyle change, and I'm like, I don't really feel like I have any friends, and that was a scary place to be. And when I started to say, well, why do I feel that way? And I start to look at how I interact with specifically other men. I was always protecting myself, shielding myself. I would only let in as much information as I wanted. I was worried that anything I'd share might get used against me. So there's this just fear. There's just a lot of fear of actually being open and honest and letting other men see who I am. And holy smokes, it's tough to be there. And I'm not alone. You look at some of the research that's out there. I mean, Mark, you were sharing some pretty amazing statistics with me before we started today's conversation around mental health and dads in particular in the UK. I don't know if have you talked about that on the show? Have you
Yeah,
shared that stat? Oh man.
Yeah, so I was saying before, AD, about how 75% of males in the UK, 75% of all suicides in the UK are men, but 33% of those are new dads. And that's something we've talked about quite a bit. So we're doing quite a lot of challenges this year, Dai, for mental health, for charity. And we're raising money for Calm, which is a charity that combats suicide. And so we've done a couple of, we've done like a Warzone tournament, like an online Call of Duty Warzone tournament where we had like 100 guys all playing. And then we're doing a charity bike ride in the summer where we're going from Dover to Newquay, which is like 350 miles over 3 days.
That's great. That's a haul.
Yeah.
Good for you guys. That's great.
So yeah, we're going to try and do a bit. But yeah, that was a statistic we were talking about just before.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And it's, you'd say it's worrying, but when you look out there, when you genuinely open your eyes and you look at single dads or new dads, like say especially first time dads, there's like this glazed look, and you think you're just on autopilot, and it's that modern question of are you okay? And we're very good at going, yep, we're good, like everything's fine, but it's now about learning the signs behind that. And when somebody is saying, yeah, we're good, you can tell. And if you, goes back to your point on vulnerability, if you show a bit of vulnerability yourself, you get that acceptance. And, and people start opening up. And that's what we found on these shows. Hey, Marco, it's about people start opening up to us and going through their stories and something they probably would never do. Like, we're complete strangers, but they see that vulnerability in us. We're open and honest. And then they start opening, and you can see the change in them. You can see the change because it's that old tale, a problem shared, problem halved. Yeah, and it very much is. It's, if we can help one person, we've accomplished everything we set out to do, and that's the bottom line. But
man, I love that.
We're getting so much buy-in, and it's brilliant. I've had people contact me, after shows and things, messaging saying, I never knew that. I never knew that people would go through such things because I've done it. I thought I was alone. And it's because we're very good at men that are going, no, we're good. We're fine. As soon as we close that door.
It's just that, and I'm sure you'll coming on to this. I'm sure you'll explain this feeling. You've probably had this yourself, Dai, where, when you have that weight lifted off your shoulders sometimes, that's what, when some of these people are opening up and having those, being able to share their emotion, they sometimes feel like that weight being lifted off you. It's just like I had it with a job, so I got made redundant last year, and I hated it. I should have quit. I didn't, but the day they told me I was being made redundant, I laughed at the person. I laughed at the person telling me, and I walked out of the office. And just the sense of freedom that I got from that. I set up my own business since then, and we've done great. But just that, having that weight lifted off your shoulder was just life changing. And it did. It changed my life because who I was 12, and I've written about this on a couple of blogs. But who I was sort of 12 months ago, where I was always looking inwards at myself and what I wanted to do and all this, and I'm looking outwards and I'm trying to help and do that sort of thing. So it was just a real life changing thing for me. But and I'm sure you went from a corporate job, Dai, into, I guess we'll get onto that, but you went from a corporate job into a completely different world, and I'm sure that was probably similar for you, although concerning, right? But you also had that feeling of relief. Yes,
absolutely. Well, and again, it's how we look at change. I think that is the big issue. As I know, I used to be someone that would fight change. Any changes, I rarely would believe it was a good thing. Like especially anything that might involve really big change and my role in it. And what I mean by that is, leaving a stable career, a stable income, where of 17 years, there was a lot of safety there, right? There was a lot of confidence that, well, I could just keep doing this for forever. I don't foresee, the company was stable, my role was stable, but I wasn't really happy. there was other things that I really wanted to do, that my family wanted to do, you know, and you know, you come to a point where you start to realize, okay, well, this is the path I'm on. Feels really good to be here. Feels really safe. I know this. But now, well, you know, every day it's like that little nagging itch. You know, we get those little itches every once in a while. And if you can't itch it, it's like, all you can do is like, you think about it. It's there. You know, it's there. It's getting annoying. And it's like, gosh, when am I going to just deal with that itch and actually do something about it? You know, and I think what eventually happens, we either learn to just ignore it entirely and just live with the itch, or we get to a point where we just can't bear it any longer. We know we got to itch it and we got to make a change. And I think when I think back on some of my most trying changes, some of the biggest changes I've lived through in my life, and we all have these moments, you know, those moments where you feel like you've come to a fork in the road. I can go left or I can go right, but there was no question I couldn't stay as I was anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like I could try to just keep going this direction, but I know that things won't be as easy as they are right now. Just to give you an idea, like I was morbidly obese as a teenager. You know, like I was a really big kid. Don't feel sorry for me. I got there all on my own. You know, I ate a lot of very nutrition poor food, played a ton of video games, and really for about 5 years I was very inactive and yet ate calories like I was a professional athlete. So, you know, lots of calories, low activity. I grew outward. And you know, I remember getting to a point where I was battling with suicidal thoughts. I was battling with a lot of mental health as well as physical challenge as a result of some of the stigmas I was battling as that morbidly obese teen. And, you know, I got to a point where I was like, okay, well, if I keep doing what I'm doing right now, by the time I'm 20, 5 years from now, it isn't going to be any easier than it is right now. Or I could go do something completely different, something that I have no former training in. I have no knowledge on how to get healthy, how to get well. You know, as a 14-year-old boy, I'm like, I don't know what to do. And that scares the crap out of me.
Yeah.
And yet I'll tell you one little thing. And then I like to hear if this relates to you guys, you know, like just at some of the big changes that you've gone through, especially Marco, what you went through with your career in the last year, you know, like you get to this point where all of a sudden you realize I'm more afraid of staying the same than I am of the idea of changing. And I think when we get to that place, we know we're ready for a big change. You know, like we may not know how to do it, but we're pretty confident that we know why we want to do it. And because of that, we just lean in and we figure it's going to be as hard as heck. It's going to be scary. There's going to be lots of growth, lots of learning, probably a lot of mistakes made along the way. But we're still less afraid of that than the idea of just staying as we are, staying unhealthy. Like, so me staying as that morbidly obese fat kid, I was more afraid of that than I was of any potential change. And that's when I knew I was ready for a change, you know? And I've seen this repeated a few times in my life when I've come to those moments where I'm like, ugh, am I ready to make a change? Do I want to make a change? Well, yeah, I do. But man, I have no idea how to do it. It's scary, you know, especially like leaving a career 17 years. I'm going to pull my kids out of school. We're going to start traveling. What are we going to do for money? How are we going to do this? You know, you start to, there's a lot of fear, but we'll come back to that. So I don't know. Like, can you guys relate to that? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, well, definitely. It's, I mean, for you at 14, making that decision is just incredible because it's only you who can decide that.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, definitely relate to that point you come to where you go, yeah, if I continue down this path, it's not great. It's not great at all. But you get comfortable. You get comfortable.
You do.
You know, it's what you know, and it becomes a habit. You know, and it's
fear of the unknown, isn't it?
100%, 100%, and it's making that first step of when you say to yourself, "No, I'm going to do it. I'm going to change." Whether it's career, whether it's lifestyle, diet, everything. When you decide yourself, because you can be told every day by somebody, no, you should be doing this or you should be eating that. People can tell you, but you have to decide to do it.
Yes.
But I think as well, it depends what you listen to in terms of outside influence, because you know, like we set this business up literally 12 months ago, but for 2 or 3 years before we were talking about doing it. But then you know, people around you going, oh yeah, but most businesses fail within their first 12 months, and you've got a good job. I had a really good career. I'd worked in the same sort of industry for 10 years and built my way up quite high. And everyone was like, the grass isn't always greener, and so you have all these outside influences, and for a lot of people that just crushes them and says,
that's right.
Oh yeah, I'll just stay doing what I'm doing then. And then it's that, like you said, you'll do the job that you can do, but it's not fulfilling you any other way. And I think we spend 1/3 of our life in work. So why spend 1/3 of your time doing the job you hate? That's a lot of your life. So do something you love. Do something you enjoy. Like I've talked about this. I talk about this a lot in a couple of blogs and videos that I've done where I say, like, are you the kind of person that when the alarm clock rings on a Monday morning, you turn it off and you don't want to get out of bed and you take that journey to work, with trepidation, driving down the road, like, oh, I really don't want to be in? Or are you the kind of person that jumps out of bed and goes, yeah, let's get in, let's attack the week? Because if you're not that kind of person, then you're not doing the job that you should be.
How does that work for working at home?
That's why I was on the beach today. I got up, went to the
because my alarm goes off and I think, I've got to go make breakfast. Like, oh no! But it is. I get it. It's it comes down to that point again. You're the only one that can make the change, and it almost sounds that when people are saying to you, yeah, but most businesses fail within their first 12 months, and it's almost like that hint of jealousy that we spoke about earlier. You're about to step out and do your own thing, be your own boss, take control. Not many people like that because they either haven't got, let's put it bluntly, they haven't got a set of balls to do it themselves, or they're comfortable, they're happy. They're happy doing their Monday 9 to 5. If that's for them, brilliant. If they're happy and they're content, brilliant. But to be negative and try and sway you, like you said, outside influence.
One of my first questions was going to be, how did you start your fitness journey? Because I have seen that photo. Online. There's a photo of you, I think at 14, where you're a bigger lad,
bigger boy.
But how did you start? Was it literally just something in your head that said, I've got to change this? Or was there any outside influences pushing you to change it, other than the people giving you the negative stereotypes? Was there anyone encouraging you to go and do something? Like, how did you go from the couch potato to into shape and doing what you did?
It's really interesting because my parents were very supportive. They had separated and eventually divorced. So my brother and I would often spend every other weekend. So every 2 weeks we'd go to my dad's place for a couple nights, and that was just the routine. So my mom was left raising my brother and I. And but also she was having to work full time to support us. My dad was great; he was still a provider as well. But we didn't see him. His was more financial support. It wasn't necessarily any of the other traditional supports that we would have. When you think father and child, there's certain aspects that we get used to or expect, and so our relationship was limited based on that, right? That limited interaction and so forth. But one thing I got to say about my parents is they always wanted my brother and I to be happy. I think as parents, that's sort of I like to think it's a given. It's just an absolute that, of course, for our children, we want nothing but happiness for them. Right? We want them to have a great life. We don't want them to have a sad life. No one would wish that upon anybody, but especially our own kids. And because of that unconditional love, they used to often they would encourage me, like, why don't we get you a gym membership? Why don't we get you a personal trainer? Maybe we go see a dietitian. We'll take you to the doctor. We'll find out, so a lot of the ways that they were trying to support me was gearing me to go do things to help me with my health. But you got to understand, at age 14 or 13, especially when they from age 12 through 14, they were always trying to invite me to do certain things. But every time they would come at me with a suggestion or recommendation or an invitation, I would take it as a personal attack. I'm like, listen, you think I'm fat? You think I'm ugly. You think I'm not good enough. That's why you want me to change. You know, so like I would be very just quite a bit of animosity, right? Just animosity. I get upset. And I mean, a lot of us feel this way at times. I mean, you think about it, even in our closest relationships, like I get it. We want to try to fix things for people. I know that's something that I've always tried. And I realize people don't necessarily want to be fixed because that sort of implies that they're broken to begin with.
Yeah.
And I don't believe any of us are broken. And you know, that's another conversation entirely. But what happened was that morning where this all went down, and for some reason I had this shift mentally and emotionally, and to be quite honest, spiritually as well, and right down to the physical. Like there was an actual physical shift in my body that day where, you know, I just came to a realization. I broke down and lost it in front of the mirror after getting out of the shower. And I won't go into the whole story with you guys, but bottom line is I lost it, like uncontrollable sobbing. And just, I remember locking eyes on my naked body after getting out of the shower. I'm toweling off and I'm just like, who is this guy? Who is this guy that's looking back at me in this mirror? I don't know who he is, but I can tell you, I hate him. He's disgusting. And just the words and the thoughts that were coming to my mind is not anything that any of us would want to wish on anybody else, nor ourselves. Mm-hmm. Yet that's where I was. A lot of anger, a lot of sadness. and you know, it was weird, but in that moment, you know, I started reconciling certain things, and I started to realize that, you know what, the only person that's to blame for getting this way and for making this my reality was me. I stopped pointing fingers at everybody else, right? Trying to blame my parents, trying to blame their divorce, you know, trying to just blame anything but myself, right? Like no ownership whatsoever. And all of a sudden I realized, you know, no one's going to help me change. I got to do this myself. And I came out of that bathroom just not knowing how. I had no idea. But I remember coming out and finding my dad and just being like, Dad, I want to get healthy. I want to get fit. I don't want to be like this anymore. And he must have seen something in me, because that afternoon we went out and bought me a mountain bike. I wanted a bike because it was something I could do privately. I didn't have to go to a gym to exercise. You didn't have to do it around my house to have other family members seeing me do it. Like I wanted something that could be on my own pace. And I always remembered I loved cycling as a kid. So it seemed like a natural step for me. It's something easy to do. And so besides just going out and riding my bike every day, getting that daily movement, I started to change how I ate. And I went to the library. I got books out on this stuff. My kids, they're still laughing at it because they're like, why don't you just Google it, Dad? And I'm like, I'm older than Google, you know? But that's how it got started. But thankfully, and I have to give it to my parents, to my friends, to the communities that I was a part of, or at least started to become a part of after wanting to make that change, was that there was a lot of support there to help me along. Because not every day is a good day, right? There was a lot of challenges along the way, a lot of new learnings, a lot of personal issues. And when I say personal issues, just the mental health sides of things, right? Mm-hmm. But with that support, I just saw change start to happen really gradually. It took 20 months, guys, like 20 months to get to a point where I felt like, wow, I've got a new lifestyle, and my physicality and my emotional maturity, like a lot of things shifted for me over those 20 months, almost 2 years. But that's sort of how it got started, right? Like that was it. And just so you know, like the biggest external motivator for me at the time was I just wanted a girlfriend. Like I wanted to be wanted. I wanted to be wanted. You know, like bottom line, I wanted a girlfriend. I wanted to have a relationship with somebody. You know, I wanted someone to love me, you know, and want me. And I know there's a lot to unpack, and that's kind of a statement, but that's really what was happening to me at that time. And yeah. So anyways, that's sort of how everything got started, you know, but it shifted everything and sort of set the stage for what unfolded over the next 30 years.
I was going to ask, what from obviously toweling off at 14, looking at yourself and having that emotional, how long did it take for you before you were toweling off again, looking at yourself thinking, I'm happy with where I've come to?
I'd say like within as little as like literally a month and a half, 2 months, I started to be able to physically notice the differences. You know, I could start seeing, like, let alone my pants fit differently, right? Like they were practically falling off my hips. My shirts and all that became really, really baggy. Yeah, you know, but also my performance just in basic things that I would normally do that would be hard. Like in my high school, a lot of my classes were on the 3rd floor. You'd have to walk up 3 flights of stairs. I remember getting up those stairs. I'd have a light sweat building and I'd be huffing and puffing. And I can remember, like, within just a matter of months, I could run up those stairs and I wouldn't be huffing and puffing. You know, I could bend over and tie my shoes, you know, like on my own. I didn't have to like try to get my foot propped up on a chair and all this weird, like just little tiny things, but little things that I just took for granted. You know, all of a sudden these things became easier. And that's when I started to really realize, holy smokes, change is happening, but it's happening because I'm putting some work in. I'm actually doing something to produce these results. And so that was like the biggest sort of shifts that started to happen. And it's what kept me going. You know, like we all need to have wins. We all need to feel like we're winning, like we're seeing progress. Because when we see the progress, we get excited, but then we realize that what we're doing is not in vain. Like it's not just something that we're doing for the sake of doing it. We're actually doing it with the intention of creating a positive change or an adaptation. You know, we're trying to evolve. And that's when I realized that, you know, I could be a victim of change, or I could start being more of a protagonist of change, right? Like I could start to take more of an active role in the changes that are going to happen in my life. And I realized some are way outside my control. I can never influence, but I can influence how I react to those, right? Those changes. But there are a lot of changes that we can create for ourselves on our own. But it takes a lot of effort because it involves doing something that usually is either fearful or afraid of, or it's something that we're completely foreign to and we have no idea of how to do it. So it affects our confidence in ourselves and our confidence in just taking action. And so there's a bunch of stuff to unpack there, but at the end of the day, just trust a process, trust that you can do it. And I know it sounds almost, I don't know, I'm not trying to go way out there to the sort of, I try not to use language that's too woo-woo. You know what I mean? Like I like to look more at the science of change. And there's a lot of science that backs that we can do this. And I bet you guys have worked through lots of big changes in your life already. And if you look back at how the change happened, you probably realize it's because you started doing something very specific. You didn't do it just once. You didn't do it just twice. It was something that you started to implement regularly. And based on that effort, it started to produce certain results, certain changes. Well, you did that. You did that. And so getting to that point where all of a sudden you realize, like, holy smokes, I'm the one that's creating this great change in my life. It's pretty powerful, right? Because we can repeat that process again and again and again.
It's those small wins. Like you said, you know, your clothes started to fit differently. You could walk up a flight of stairs. You could tie your own, silly as it sounds, tie your own shoe without having to prop your leg up. It's anything, especially in the fitness world. So fitness journey, obviously lockdown and everything has been like a game changer for most people. Everyone's done workouts at home and all this. And it's those, I think it's probably human nature. We expect things to be like that, instant. Right. I want to change. I want to be, you know, I want to look a certain way. So I'm going to start working out. After the first week, people go, hang on, where's my six pack? Like, why am I not ripped? But people don't, you know, you've got to remember it's a process. Like I said, it's a process. You have to trust the process. And in 6 weeks down the line, you'll see a difference. It might only be a slight difference, but there's a difference. Yeah. But then all of a sudden you're in a routine, you know, you've got that accountability. It's making those changes. I did it in the first lockdown. I went online, got an online coach.
Nice.
Did all this stuff as well as working. But I noticed a massive difference at the end of, I think it was 8 weeks, 7-8 weeks. I felt great, but I stopped because I thought I'm good now. That's it. I can maintain this. But no, reality kicks your ass and goes, no, you can't if you don't keep doing that.
Yeah, I went the opposite way, really. So like when we were in college together, me and Aidy, you know, I used to do performing arts. You know, I used to be in theatre doing dancing and all that sort of stuff. I used to be super fit, super thin, And then I don't even know what happened. Like I ate all the years in between now and then, I think is what happened. And but then just before lockdown, so it was like this beginning of December. What would that be? 19. Yeah, we locked down in March 20, didn't we?
Yeah.
So December 19, I was like, I'm doing something about this. I need to change my lifestyle. I got to the heaviest I'd ever been. I think I was like 17 and a half stone. You know, I'm only, so you know that's pretty big. And then I got to about Christmas Day. I was at the gym. Like that's how much I was into it.
Nice.
And then by middle of March 20, I'd lost nearly 3 stone.
Wow.
And I was like, my clothes, like you say, clothes start to fit you better. You can walk up the stairs. I could play in the garden with my boy without nearly dying. Yes. And then lockdown happened. And I was like, yeah, sweet. I'm going to put I brought, weights. I brought an exercise bike. I brought a treadmill. My garden looked like the gym. Like I proper kitted it out. I didn't use it at all. Like I literally stopped and then all the weight started to go back on. And then you start to have the mental health problems, and then, yeah. So for me, it was the lockdown was like the worst thing for me because I just felt like I started to gain that momentum with that journey. And then that sort of put the blocks on it. And then what happened was, here I don't know what it was like over there, but we had like 3 months of solid lockdown at the start where you couldn't leave, virtually you couldn't leave the house. So then what happens, it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday night on Zoom nights with the boys where you're drinking wine. And honestly, there was one night where I drank 3 bottles of wine.
Whoa.
On my own in the living room. I threw up everywhere, like literally everywhere.
Yeah.
Living room floor. I was so drunk that I tried to clean it up with tissue paper. Just honestly, I came down. My wife was going mental the next day.
Oh, I bet.
Well, that was the reality. It was like I sort of it completely derailed me to the point where I was like starting to put the weight back on and. Yeah, but I've just taken up cycling actually. So cycling is what I've really started to get back into it with that again.
Amazing.
But cycling's great. So what I was going to ask you actually, Dai, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer this.
Sure.
Do you think that the success that you saw from 14 to I don't know let's say 20, your journey through being I think you call it you said obese yourself. It's not. I'm not insulting you to call you that.
No, it's all good.
Through obesity, do you think the success you saw through your journey? Do you think without that you would have took the career that you have within fitness?
No, I know that it was very. I mean, that change that I experienced. There was a couple of things that happened, within those 2 years as I started to establish this new routine, this lifestyle. And when I started to experience friends of my family, like my mom's friends or dad's friends, that had seen this transformation of me over a span of 2 years, and they started coming around to visit, and they would take time to sit me down and start to talk to me about their health and well-being. Specifically, what are their habits? Because all of a sudden they saw me as someone that could potentially give them advice or support or to help guide them. And, in my life, that limited period of time that I'd been on the planet by that point, like 17 years, I'm here like, wait, you're here to see me? You're here to talk to me? You actually care what I have to say? Like, it was a new experience for me, but all of a sudden I was like, wow, this is a lot of fun. I can help others start to experience transformations, positive transformations for their life. And so that was my first, very informal, but it was my first taste of coaching and mentorship, but not just being on the receiving end of that, but now to be someone that can actually provide that to other people. And I was like, I like this. I like it a lot. It makes me feel really good, but it also makes other people feel really good too. And I help them start creating these results. So that's what got me into that sort of mindset of, wow, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could be a trainer. Maybe I could be involved in the fitness industry in some capacity. I wasn't 100% sure what it would look like. And to be honest, those there was a number of years where I was just doing all sorts of stuff just because I liked it. And I loved all the stuff, so I would just do it. I would teach spin classes, you know, I'd do some PT sessions. Man, I used to work at the rock climbing gym, and I'd do like these kids' birthday parties where I'd be stuck on the belay rope for an hour, you know, belaying kids up and down a wall. Like, I was doing all sorts of stuff. I was into martial arts, especially Taekwondo and kickboxing. So I used to teach kids in teen classes, you know, and do that. And so I did all sorts of stuff in around the fitness space while I was going to school and trying to figure out what do I want to do. And then I got into equipment sales, selling fitness equipment. I went in to buy a heavy bag at a retail store in Vancouver, and manager and I got into a conversation, and she just said, "Hey, have you ever thought about trying this?" And I was like, well, I don't know, selling fitness equipment. This is retail. I wasn't looking for a retail job, but it was the first time I worked in a position where it was commission based. So it was performance based pay, and I wasn't used to that. I was like, well, if I work a certain amount of hours, I usually make a certain amount of money. And all of a sudden it was here. It was like, well, the more people you help, the more people you support with creating lifestyle changes, the more money you'll make. And I'm like, really? Seriously? Like that? How's this work? There's no hidden agenda here. There's no like, you're not fooling here, are you? Because again, at the time I was like 20 years old, right? And so I started selling fitness equipment while I was still finishing up my schooling, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it because I could have the coaching side of things, but I was making more than a personal trainer was from a commission standpoint. You know, on a per hour basis, I was making more than teachers and some junior lawyers were making. And I was like, wow, this is pretty good. I like this. And that's sort of what I leaned into in a big way. And I did that for 17 years, selling fitness equipment, accessories, supplements, apparel, you know, just trying to help people with their own fitness journeys. And I really enjoyed it. I love the industry. But, you know, we all grow. We all go through changes. And when we go through those changes, we start to realize that maybe the path we're on has served its purpose, but maybe now it's time for a change. Yeah. So, but that desire grows too, right? Yeah. So it's like, don't ignore it. It's there. Yeah.